Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Split, the young adult book review podcast for readers and writers. I'm Brian Cohen, the author of the Ted Saves the World series. That is Robert Scanlon, who is riding a horse.
Yeah.
He writes the Dreamer Chronicles, and he is in the race.
I'm totally in the Scorpio race.
You are in the Scorpio race. Should it be singular? I think they still make them plural even in the singular.
They do.
But anyway, we're reviewing a book called The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater, and you raved about. I wasn't finished it. You raved about this book over email, and then I finished it and also really enjoyed it. So it's going to be fun to talk about here today. Horses. We don't read that many, aside from Manji in The Knife of Never Letting Go. There aren't that many animal characters that play such an important role. And of course in Rain Rain, but those are dogs. Now we've got a horse.
That's true, yeah. And
Great.
the grasshoppers.
Sure, we had the grasshoppers.
The gratuitous grasshoppers. Yeah, it's but the horses play a really big role in this, don't they? So
I know.
You know, it's and I'm categorically not a horse person.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a big horse person either.
Have you ever ridden?
I have ridden, yes.
Yeah, me too. So, and that's partly why I'm not a horse person.
I was very young. I don't remember it much. So
I wasn't so young, but it's just, yeah, I can't see what the attraction is. But look, extraordinary. So I don't know what to say about this. We had a recommendation for some of Maggie Stiefvater's books from a couple of different people. This specific title, The Scorpio Races, was recommended by Kristen. So thanks a lot, Kristen. You've changed my life and given me another author to be a fanboy of. So you can kind of guess what my response is going to be. But we're sort of hedging around, aren't we? So maybe we should just lead off with that usual wonderful summary that you do so well.
What a guy.
Which is why people pay you for it, Brian.
This is true. Sean Kendrick is the returning champion of the Scorpio Races, an annual competition in which riders try to keep hold of their water horses long enough to make it to the finish line. Not all of them make it through alive. When Puck Connolly, the first girl ever to enter, joins the race to keep her family intact, both Sean and Puck could never be prepared for what happens next. One race will decide their fate or kill them in the process. Da-da-da.
Da-da-da. People die in these races.
So this is just about a boy and his girl and his horse. And it's kind of a simple story, you know, when you think of it that way. But it's told in a complex way. It's really charming. I think that this book is just extremely charming, and you feel like you're part of this small island village, and you kind of just wish you could vacation there and stay there for a while.
Yes. To me, I've never been to the Isle of Man, but it's quite clearly based on small islands between probably England, Ireland and Wales, I would think. And, they're always portrayed as these kind of bleak, windswept places. And I just think that was really done beautifully by Maggie Stiefvater. The claustrophobic feeling of a small island, the fact that everybody knows one another, you can't get away with anything without someone else knowing about it. There are so many threads going through this story that as a reader, I was lost in it, and then as someone who's interested in the craft of writing, I was continually staggered by how many little things were deftly woven in here and there. And just, if when I grow up, I want to be the love child of Maggie Stiefvater and Pierce Brown, who wrote Red Rising. Discovering this kind of writing blows me away. It's just not a book I could write. And I think, when when you're a writer, you do tend to look at books and say, yeah, maybe I could write something like that. And that's kind of nice. And as a reader, we like to be enthralled. And as both are reading a book like this thinking, oh, stunning, absolutely stunning. Really.
The author's note, I know it's in the Audible edition. I didn't know if it was in the Kindle too, but she talks about how she tried to write this book multiple times before succeeding.
Yes, I read that.
So maybe you could write this book, but only after a few stops and starts to get your bearings.
Well, yeah, that might be the case. Yeah, exactly. And perhaps that's why it's so lovingly written, lovingly told, because it's been come at from many, many different angles. And, and we get it's interesting because you've got sensational pace, but it rises and falls.
Yeah.
The characters are all feisty. I mean, there are no cardboard characters in this book. Even the sidekick younger brother has got OCD and is constantly wringing his hand and cleaning the kitchen. It's just there's something and there's a purpose for that. There's a reason for that, and there's a reason for every single scene. There's a reason for every single character to be doing what they're doing. I love the differentiation between Kate, or Puck as she's called, nicknamed, and Sean. Hey, what was the audiobook like? Did they have accents? Do they have different characters because we've got dual first-person present tense alternating more or less in this story.
Yeah, there was a male narrator and a female narrator, both slight accents, not anything crazy. And then when the American was there, the American, he was very American. So it wasn't very thick or anything. It was just slight, and I think that was good. So it didn't really draw attention. But there was definitely a differentiation between the Islanders and non-Islanders for sure.
Okay, nice. Yeah,
nice. I love the audio was really good. It was really, really strong.
That's always good to hear as well.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that there's so much tension. You end one scene and you say, oh, I want to know what happens next. And that's a mark of a great story.
Yeah. And you don't know what's going to happen. It's very surprising throughout.
It is.
And you think some parts of it are going to inevitably happen. And then, it kind of turns. And I thought that especially the surprise ending, which was tearjerker.
Yes.
Tearjerker for sure.
This is another one of those books where I wanted there to be a series.
Yeah.
Even though it wouldn't make sense from the point of view of the story. I love the characters so much. So that does mean, of course, that Maggie, I'm going to read your other books, and you should come on the show and tell us about your miraculous, incredible way with YA, because this is someone who really knows older teenagers. I mean, Sean is 19, and we're not sure how old Puck is, but I think she must be of similar age, of course.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, I mean, the only thing that's inevitable is that there's going to be this huge race in November, and And if you try, I was trying to tell somebody else the story. Oh yeah, it's a story of this sort of a boy and a girl who kind of they kind of rub each other up the wrong way a bit, but they can feel an attraction. And it's all about horses. And then there are these magical horses that are stronger and bigger and nastier, and they're flesh eating and they eat people, and they come out of the sea, but humans catch them and then they race them once a year in November. That does not make any sense.
Yeah. When you say it like that, it sounds wacky.
It's awful.
But it's. I think this is part of the reason for the slow burn, and I was going to definitely talk about this in the writer's perspective, but it kind of takes a little to get into, and I think that's because we've got this wacky mythical thing happening. So in order for people to believe it, I think going into it a little slowly makes sense here in this kind of story. So unless that's just her style, I don't know. I haven't read other things by her, but I think it makes a lot of sense for this story.
Well, she's a she's a Twitter lunatic. You should go look at her Twitter feed. It's good.
Hearing her voice, because she did the voice for her author's note.
Yes.
She sounds wacky.
Yeah,
She sounds kooky.
She is
I
super
like
cool.
the idea.
She's really into
Yeah.
cars as well. So you're just like, whoa. But you definitely want to have a look at her Twitter feed. It's really funny.
Nice.
So,
I will.
Yeah, really, really good. And also, I thought that how do they pronounce the Kapaiushka? Is that how they pronounce
Kapowishka?
Kapowishka. Okay, I looked it up, tried to find it. I mean, this is not made up. You know, she's reached back into legends and mythology of the Celtic mythical seahorses. Have come by various different names. Kelpies is one of the names. The Kapaiushka, or what did you just call it?
Kapoishka.
Kapoishka. Okay, I get it right, Maggie. I get it right. And you know, they themselves are wonderful characters because
especially Kor, right?
Yeah,
Kor is that just such a complex animal character that factors into the story heavily. Very interesting.
And it's not a talking horse either. Yeah, so that will have to
is a real horse with no English.
Exactly, and so that all has to be done with great care, I think, when you're the reader, because it's very easy to get turned off of animals who are strong characters in books, and it can come across as being childish. And there is nothing childish about this book.
No,
it's pretty. I think there's some kissing and some obvious romance. Mostly, it's quite dark, and there are some very violent and gory moments. So, it's not another one. I'd say my usual expression, not for the faint-hearted. But if you like a pacey, dark, and you say slow burner because the tension is rising and rising and rising and rising and rising and rising and rising, and you feel like it's never letting up. Yet at no point is it one of those sort of action blaster gun type thrillers. It's it's quite literary, really, in that respect.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say it's more literary fiction than YA, but it's still very exciting.
Yeah. And then you've got Thisbe itself as an island, which is another real character in its description. The weather. It's always it's known as a writer's trick to bring in dark weather, and when things go bad. So there are some scenes in there in the rain and in the terrible weather, which is, and with the wild sea as well. That's fantastic.
And
then you've got some really good villains. You've got one. You can not say villains, but antagonists. You've got Benjamin Malvin, who is he's kind of the lord of the island that people rely on, and Kendrick works for him. So they've got this difficult relationship, and yet you sense that there's something both good and bad about him. Yet his son, Matt Malvin, or Matthew, what a great name, Mutt.
Yeah, Mutt.
Mutt. He's cracked. It's just pure evil, and I love some of the things he did. Just took my breath away, and was surprising.
It surprises. This is one of those few that you don't have necessarily a mystery, but you really want to know what happens. So if you're not going to have a mystery, then you should definitely have a giant event that's coming up at the end.
Yes.
Because I think that they serve a similar purpose.
Yes.
You still have that dramatic tension of not knowing what exactly is going to happen. So if you can't have a mystery, have a giant event at the end of the book.
And then populate it with these superb characters. I mean, we really identify. They're quite different, Puck and Sean. And you've got Puck, who she in her head she thinks she's quite sensitive, but she can't help herself, and she snaps at everybody. She's really lippy. The dialogue is I'm going to talk about it more in the writer's perspective, but the dialogue is magnificent. And yet you've got Sean, who just gives everyone the silent treatment, and and I just thought that was brilliant. That the way that she portrayed that was not so much that he was he never said anything, or that classic, and Sean said nothing. She never really says that. It's just more a case of there's these standoff moments, and superb, absolutely superb.
Yeah, which of course just adds to the tension.
Yeah, it's up for a movie as well. Don't know who's gonna direct it, but for me, I just thought it should be, Tim Burton or Christopher Nolan or something like that. Someone who can make those really dark, windswept, oppressive things, but with really intense, in-your-face relationships.
Let's get a guy who just did the new Mad Max.
All right, yeah, okay. I haven't seen that yet.
Right? Yeah. Oh, you got to see it. Well, let's get into writer's perspective. We were already kind of touched upon it a little bit. So I have here that the world was incredibly vivid, could smell the salt in the air and hear the horses trampling the sand. But it never felt overbearing. It felt like this is the information you need to know to understand the scene, and then we're on to the scene. So I felt like I was a part of it, but never felt like I was overwhelmed by all of the setting.
I had exactly the same thing. In fact, I've written it down as a bonus point. That there, to me, I suppose, like a lot of fast readers, I read visually in the sense that it's creating something for me in my head as I read. And for me, there were so many what I called movie moments in this book, where suddenly somebody would turn and just glare, or there'd be this part where there'd be a sudden gobsmacking realization, or there'd be a sudden event that was left to your imagination, and all done with no telling.
Yeah.
It's all done with showing. And I think that is down to Maggie Stiefvater's fantastic writing craft. She's obviously written more than a few books before she's gotten to this one. And I think that really shows. And that's probably why I can look at it and think, well, I can't write that yet, because I don't have that feel for the story inside me just yet, perhaps. Look, it's her story. It's not mine. And I think it would be easy for, there's been lots of criticism about books like, for example, 50 Shades of Grey. Easy to take pot shots at something that's so successful, of course. But outside of some of the obvious criticisms of it, some people said, has this woman ever been to America? I mean, because some of the distances are completely wrong. I mean, and we have Google Maps. So here we have, though, an American author writing about these, Irish or pseudo-Irish islands. Thisbe is a mythical place. And yet at no time did I feel that this was an American author trying too hard. I was totally in the story, and kudos, absolutely kudos to that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, her research was obviously extensive, and and books like this, epic, just amazing books that really take you to a place. I think those require that research, and I think it's great that she did it.
We've talked about that before, haven't we? That idea that you transport your readers somewhere. And I was so transported with this.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. And I love the launch of the story as well. You get the young Sean at age of 8, which sort of is the precipitating, one of the inciting incidents. It's not the inciting incident.
Yeah. For him, it's certainly a major one.
That's right. It propels his motivation throughout the book. No question about that. And I love the fact that also she's written Puck and Sean with completely different thought patterns and observations.
Yeah.
That's really clever. Now, in the audiobook, of course, you've got different people narrating, so it's clear who is who.
Yeah.
There were a couple of occasions, and this is not at all a criticism, there are a couple of occasions where I went straight to the next chapter because I really wanted to find out what's happening. And then wait, because I suddenly got thrown because there were some different observations going on, and I looked at the top. Okay, this is back to Sean again.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could think as to why that happened were two reasons. One, I'm reading too fast. Two, which is a good sign of a good book. And two, maybe the sentence structure was the same, even though the content was different. So,
Yeah.
that's something that maybe, if you're really saying, how could you stop that from happening? I don't know, but I think
Yeah.
mostly because I was reading really fast, and like you said, not really a typical YA story. You've got
No?
the young heroine kind of thing, but it's not well, there's people pitted against one another, but I think
Yeah.
one of the reasons why it should appeal to YA readers is for all the right reasons. We've got young people here involved in a very adult scenario. There are, in fact, adults trying to take control of their lives or knowing better, especially in Kate's case, where they want to keep talking her out of the races. And that's really wonderful metaphors for all teenagers growing up, where they're about to take adult steps. And there's no question that Kate in this story takes a major and highly risky adult step.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that you just it's tough because we've done several books that aren't really YA but are because they're the right age, and it's kind of because they transcend it because they don't have the trappings. It doesn't feel childish. It doesn't feel like an adult couldn't get something out of it. It feels like it's meaty, it's heavy, it's thick. It takes. You're gonna need to box up half of it, and put it in some Tupperware in your fridge because you can't get through it all right away. You've got a lot to take from it. So I think maybe that's one of the distinctions between, say, something like this and, say, like Paper Towns, where you kind of read once and you're like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
And Paper Towns is great, but does it stick with you like Scorpio races? No, it doesn't.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, well said. So therefore, I suppose what we extract from that is that there's something underlying that touches the very emotional essence of what it is to be a human, and like you say, you got a bit of a tearjerker at the end. No, but all through it, though, I mean, there are some just major rises in tension and some.
Oh yeah.
If you really want to be analytical about it, by the way, which I did because I got curious. I think that this is a perfect book to study for plot construction because there are first and second plot points. There's a brilliant midpoint, so much so it took my breath away that I've been reading it on the Kindle app on the iPad, and I had to, tap the middle to bring up the percentage through and say, is that the midpoint? Holy moly, 51%. That's the midpoint. How fantastic is that? So, and as you say, there's slow burn, which I call a burning fuse. It's as if it's burning down and you don't know what the explosion's going to be at the end. You just know, and given the writing style, that it's going to be big.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I agree with you. Definitely. We've talked about books to study for action. Study this book for plot.
I absolutely think so. I really do think it would make a wonderful writer's circle, writer's group study, English assignment in probably senior for seniors.
Yeah, I would say
it would be absolutely totally wonderful. And I can't understand why it's not more talked about. Maybe it is, and I'm just stuck in the mud and never seen it.
You're stuck in the mud, Robert, like a horse.
I know. On the sandy beaches, being sucked into the sea, waiting for one of those capo-wishkas to come up and eat me.
I'm waiting for one of these takeaways to come and eat us. Do you want to go first?
I'd love to go first. Yeah, I'd love to go first.
Go for it.
This is, I think, one of the best books I've read, what they call action beats that punctuate dialogue without taking over the dialogue. So the cheesy way to do it is to finish a line of dialogue. So, anyway, that's what I think. He turned and looked out the window. So, everyone's always looking out of windows or taking sips of something. That's the classic poor author's way to do it. She doesn't ever do that. You get things like, Puck looked down at a horse and twisted the mane or something like that. There's just these beautiful action beats that continue to describe the action, fit the dialogue, aren't cheesy, aren't cliched, and are just so well put together. Yeah. Sean, kept his eyes down at the counter. It's just, they're just great lines. So I really like the action beats. Number 2, your second takeaway.
Number 2, I think if you spend time on development in the beginning of your book, the plot twists and turns will mean a lot more to your readers in the end.
Yeah.
That's number 2.
That's number
3.
Number 3 coming up. I got 2 parts, number 3, because I love this book so much. I've realised how much of a fan I am of dialogue, especially dialogue with misdirection. What we mean by that is not just snarky for being snarky, but when somebody says something about, hey, what's it up in the sky? And the other person turns and says, stop changing the subject. And then the other person says, yeah, well, like you're going to express your feelings. So at no point are people answering one another. And that's what humans do. We don't answer one another much in dialogue. And when we do, it's boring. Would you like a piece of toast? Yes, please. What would you like on it? Maybe some butter and some jam. Oh, that'd be great. Shall I put that in the toaster? Yes. That would make a terribly boring book. But there are plenty of books out there with cheesy dialogue like that. And there is not a wasted drop of cheesy dialogue in this book. Everything's just some of the interactions back and forth between not just Sean and Puck, but everybody were brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it was wonderful. And my part B is that the backstory was drip fed by observations, not even by flashbacks, and that's really clever. So, for example, I think it might be Puck who's saying, she says, when you're an orphan on Thisbe.
Yeah.
Right. It's simple phrase, but
that's all you need.
It's all you need. And then that gets you wondering, oh wow, what happened to her parents? And even that isn't in the next line. It just gradually things tease out, and it's all part of that slow burning fuse. So compelling, beautiful, spine tingling. I loved it. Everyone should read it. It may not be for the younger YA crowd who like Hunger Games style action, but if you like intense, dark, and something meaningful, go for it.
I agree. You ready for a prompt?
What's going to prompt me to write something like this, Brian? You got to lay it down.
It's a different direction than you'd expect. I'm taking it simple.
Good.
What is the animal you've had the deepest connection with during your lifetime? Describe your connection and how you two understand each other so well.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, nice take on another thread within the book. We didn't really even talk about.
One of many.
Yeah. Oh,
one of many.
Stunning.
Yeah.
You got to tell us what you think of this, people. Anyone listening?
Yeah, please either answer the prompt or just tell us what you think on the Split Book Reviews. I'm like forgetting. The splitbookreviews.com, right?
That's the
one. Is that where we're at?
That's it.
Okay. You can also email us at podcast@thesplitbookreviews.com. We love hearing from you. We're now at Twitter. What's our Twitter handle again, Robert?
At the Split Book.
At the Split Book. We've been getting some great responses on Twitter, and even tagging some authors that people want us to read to try to guilt us into using them. And that's fine. That's great. And we really appreciate just connecting with you guys. So feel free to message us on any of those platforms. And next week, we are doing Shadow and Bone by Lee Bardugo. And Robert didn't like it as much as he enjoyed the Scorpio races.
Yeah, so thanks again, Kristen, for the recommendation, and also for the other people who have written in recommending Maggie Stiefvater's writings, because she has some werewolf, some shifter stories. So no doubt at some point, like Lauren Oliver, probably Piers Brown and John Green, Maggie Stiefvater will make a reappearance on The Split.
Yes. So come back next week, listen to us talk about why we think a book is good and why we think a book can help you become better. I'm Brian Cohen. That's Robert Scanlon. This has been The Split. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll be back here next week with another book.
And trotting off.
Thank you guys for watching. Somewhere on this page is a subscribe button to the Split channel. We do reviews every week. We would love it if you followed us every single week. Isn't that right, Robert?
That's exactly right. Follow us now. Hit the subscribe button.
Do it.